January 30th, 1971. Houston, Texas. For 15-year-old Donald Waldrop and his 13-year-old brother, Jerry. It was just another Saturday, a day of youthful freedom and plans to visit a friend. They were two boys on the cusp of life, full of the casual hope and invincibility that only youth can possess. Walking down a familiar street in the Heights neighborhood, unaware that a car was slowing to a stop nearby, driven by a face they might have recognized, a face that belonged to a friend of a friend, a face that was the final terrifying gateway to a horror that would shock a nation and forever define the dark underbelly of the Candyman. But before we delve into the chilling details of this case, please take a moment to hit that like button, share this video with a friend, and most importantly, subscribe to the Calendar of Crime so you don't miss future episodes. Your support helps us continue to shine a light on these dark chapters of history. The Waldrop brothers were typical Houston kids. Donald, the older brother at 15, was likely protective of Jerry, who was just 13. They lived in a working-class neighborhood, and on that cold January day, they were heading out to enjoy their weekend. Their lives, like those of so many other young men in the area, intersected with the orbit of Dean Corll, a man who had cultivated a benign, almost avuncular image. Corll was known as the Candy Man because his family had owned a local candy company, and he was famous for handing out free sweets to children. This seemingly harmless generosity was a calculated part of his monstrous facade, a way to build trust and lower the guard of his young targets and their families. Corll had two teenage accomplices, David Owen Brooks and Elmer Wayne Henley, Jr., who would actively recruit victims for him in exchange for money, typically $200 per boy. On January 30th, 1971, it was David Brooks who spotted the Waldrop brothers. Brooks, who was himself only a teenager, was deeply entangled in Corll's web of depravity, having been corrupted and exploited by the older man for years. He saw Donald and Jerry, two boys he knew, and saw them not as individuals, but as a means to an end, a payment from Corll. The lure was simple and effective: a party, a ride, or just a casual invitation from someone they knew or trusted. The boys accepted, stepping into Brooks's car, and unknowingly into the final moments of their freedom. Brooks drove them directly to Dean Corll's house in Pasadena, a seemingly ordinary suburban home that had been transformed into a chamber of horrors. The house was Corll's fortress, a place where he could indulge his darkest fantasies without fear of discovery. Dean Corll's apartment was meticulously set up for his sadistic rituals. The centerpiece of his depravity was a custom-made plywood board, often referred to as the torture board. This board was equipped with handcuffs at the top corners and rope knots at the bottom, designed to restrain his victims completely. It was here, in this room, that the Candy Man shed his friendly persona and became the sadistic monster he truly was. The Waldrop brothers, like so many before them, were subjected to unimaginable terror and torture. The details of what happened inside that house are too horrific to fully recount, but court testimony and confessions from the accomplices later revealed the chilling extent of Corll's sadism. The torture was prolonged, methodical, and designed to inflict maximum pain and humiliation. Corll was not just interested in murder. He was interested in absolute control and the slow, agonizing destruction of his victim's spirit and body. The brothers Donald and Jerry were forced to endure this nightmare together, their final moments a shared experience of terror. Corll's preferred methods of murder were strangulation or shooting with a .22 caliber pistol. After the murders, Corll and his accomplices would dispose of the bodies. The Waldrop brothers were among the first victims to be buried in a location that would later become infamous: a rented boat shed at 4500 Silver Bell in southwest Houston. The bodies were often wrapped in plastic and buried beneath the concrete floor of the shed, a macabre and hidden graveyard. For 2.5 years, the disappearance of Donald and Jerry Waldrop, along with dozens of other young men, remained a terrifying mystery. Their parents and the community were left with agonizing uncertainty. Their pleas to the police often dismissed as just another case of runaway teenagers in a transient city like Houston. The police tragically failed to connect the dots, ignoring the growing number of missing boys and the whispers of a predatory figure in the Heights. The horror finally came to light on August 8, 1973, not through a police investigation, but through a final desperate act of self-preservation. Elmer Wayne Henley, Corll's younger accomplice, was at Corll's house with a young girl when Corll, in a drug-fueled rage, threatened them both. Henley, fearing for his life, managed to get hold of Corll's .22 caliber pistol and shot him 6 times, killing the Candyman. In the immediate aftermath, a terrified Henley called the police and confessed to the murder of Corll, claiming self-defense. But his confession quickly spiraled into something far more shocking. He began to tell the police about the other boys, the bodies, and the boat shed. He led them to the shed, and what they found there was a scene of unimaginable horror. 17 bodies, including those of Donald and Jerry Waldrop, buried in the dirt floor. The discovery of the bodies in the boat shed, and the subsequent recovery of more victims at other sites, including Lake Sam Rayburn and the Bolivar Peninsula, exposed the full scale of the Houston mass murders. In total, Dean Corll was confirmed to have murdered at least 28 boys and young men between 1970 and 1973. The case instantly became the largest serial murder case in U.S. history at the time, a grim record that exposed systemic failures in law enforcement and shattered the innocence of a generation. David Brooks and Elmer Wayne Henley were both arrested and convicted for their roles in the murders, receiving life sentences. Their testimony provided the gruesome details that allowed authorities to identify the victims and piece together the full narrative of Corll's reign of terror. The Waldrop brothers, Donald and Jerry, became 2 of the most poignant symbols of the tragedy. 2 young lives, a pair of brothers, erased by a monster who hid in plain sight. The Houston mass murders left an indelible scar on the city and on the history of true crime. It forced a painful reckoning with the reality of serial predation and the vulnerability of young people. The memory of Donald and Jerry Waldrop, and all of Corll's victims, serves as a constant, heartbreaking reminder of the darkness that can lurk behind the most ordinary of facades. Before we go, please take a moment to hit that like button, share this video with a friend, and most importantly, subscribe to the Calendar of Crime so you don't miss future episodes. Your support helps us continue to shine a light on these dark chapters of history. Thanks for watching. Please comment, share, like, and subscribe for future episodes from the Calendar of Crime.